Hello, you're back with Dave and Tim at the Single Malt Review, and I'm an avowed Highland Single Malt fan, so it's a nice day when I get to try a completely new Highland Single Malt. New to me, at least. I've seen the label on the shelves a lot, but never once ventured in to try.
Yes, indeed. And although we don't have the Holy Grail, we don't have the port finish on this one, I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised on this one, because I think this is an absolute cracker of a Highland whisky. So, Deanston, pretty unassuming name, not a particularly Scottish name, really, as far as distillery names go, but it's I think, a particularly nice, maybe underrated, maybe under the radar type of a single malt, but we will be able to decide today. Funny old distillery, well, funny new distillery. I guess you could say it started in about almost 200 years ago as a cotton mill, but in 1966 was converted into a distillery, making it one of the more unusual distillery stories. So, it's usually distilleries being converted into something else.
So, old building, but a relatively young distillery.
Yeah, pretty young, pretty modern distillery as far as, well, by most distillery standards anyway. And it kind of just potted away there. It's owned by the Distill Group, which is one of these sort of international brand amalgamations that make all kinds of things, cognacs, RTDs, ciders. They think they even own a couple of Australian winery labels. And so they're mixed up in all of that, along with Bunnahabhain is the other Scotch distillery brand that the Distill owns. And they also own Black Bottle. So it's possible this shows up in Black Bottle along with Bunnahabhain, which most certainly does. It's probably the principal malt in that particular and rather good blended whisky. But this, of course, is single malt, and as it states pretty firmly on the bottle, unchill filtered, which is always good to see, 46.3%, which is a wee bit odd.
Number, but
I think that they probably needed that extra 0.3% to stop it clouding up on the shelf, being unchill filtered.
I gave the bottle a good firm shake before, and it stayed very cloudy for a very long time, so I figure, this is right, it's kind of perfect sweet spot.
And the bottle doesn't mention, but if the website is to be believed, then we are uncoloured as well. And that's a pretty jolly healthy, if somewhat fingerprinted at this stage, colour for a predominantly bourbon matured whisky, which this one is.
Yeah, I noticed there's sparse information on the cask breakdown on the label, but you're able to sleuth out some more detail.
It's your average maturation,
right.
So mostly bourbon, a bit of sherry maturation in there, and as far as I know, no finishing. Okay. So it's a good, honest whiskey, and that's kind of how I like it.
If it was a finish, then surely they'd be heralding that from on high.
So, on the nose.
I'm getting lots of honey.
There's heaps of honey.
Rich honey. That's very sweet.
Heaps of honey and lots of floral aspects as well.
Some heather, a little bit of lavender.
It's really, really good and quite typical for bourbon matured anyway, Highland qualities. And they're ones that I see maybe a bit less these days. A lot of Highland whiskies now are they're kind of doing their own thing, whether it's Ardmore being peaty or something else trying to express a deeply maritime character, or who knows, something just really, really typical like that. Just dripping with honey and lovely, lovely flowers, heather and lavender. As you said, there's even some rosemary in there as well. Really, really nice, floral, herbal, sweet, rich, very, very pleasant, and not in any way, not weird or strange or peaty or anything like that.
There's some unusual fruit coming through, just subtly. I'm getting carrots
slightly,
and gooseberries.
Yeah, it's slightly more tropical, I guess, than your average Highlander. There's a bit of tropical fruit, like rock melon, and maybe a bit of like mango and pawpaw almost. If you're familiar with those sort of southern hemisphere fruits, which do not ripen in our country, so close yet so far. Better be prepared for a mountain of green mangoes if you want to shop for them in New Zealand, where they're spoiled for them over in Australia. But never mind. Whiskey's the same.
I'm liking the currants though. That's a good end. Yeah.
Sort of red currants as well as black. So plenty going on in the nose without being really, really complicated and cerebral, and very, very pleasing as well. And we should mention, it's not a huge strength, but nor is there any burn to speak of whatsoever. So, on the palate.
Oh, that is profoundly sweet and fruity. That's that's lashings of concentrated fruit juice.
It's
And fresh berries biting into
very,
a fresh,
very sweet.
Yeah, into a ripe gooseberry.
Very, very sweet, very, very honeyed, sort of like runny clover honey,
Yeah.
rather than sort of bush honey or any particularly, like not a dark honey, it's a big flowing, sugary honey. And the fruitiness in there is there's quite a good acid to this whiskey. It really gets the saliva going the moment you taste it.
Yeah,
It's
grapefruit,
really
gooseberries, that
mouth-watering
kind of thing,
whiskey.
where you bite into it and that first bite is a snap of the crisp flesh of fruit and a good release of acid and also some very sweet juice along with that. That's what you're getting from a sip of this stuff.
It's sweet, but there's a sharpness there, which means it's quite fresh and refreshing as well, and almost crisp along with it.
That is, yeah.
And
it even tastes cooling and, very refreshing.
And as the palate sort of goes on, and it's medium long finish on it, that's when the sort of more mellow bourbon wood comes out. That's where your vanilla and coconut kind of comes in. But they're much less dominant than this incredibly rich honey and fruit which is on there.
The finish is dominated by butter and honey for me.
And with water, as you can see, I've enjoyed quite a bit of this, so I'm pretty familiar with this at all. Takes on water pretty well without sort of demonstrably changing its character. With the water, it just becomes even more fresh on the nose and on the palate without really, really changing what it is.
Oh yeah, that is just as big a flavour, only it's more mellowed out and softened a little by the addition of water.
And that brings the wood a little closer to the fore.
Yeah.
There, there's sort of a bit more richly oaked.
It hasn't
stavy
fundamentally
characters there.
transformed the flavour the way water does for some other extremely strong, distinctive whiskies.
And I think it's just really, really, really scrumptious. Like there's no sort of head scratching qualities there. It's not sort of like, what am I tasting? Or, wow, this is something tremendously off the wall or unusual. It's sort of, to me, everything that's good in Scotch whisky kind of coming together. It's not complicated, it's not complex, it's not beguiling, but it's really, really, really giving. It's a hugely generous whisky, and in terms of just drinking Scotch for the sheer pleasure of it, I have enjoyed this whisky immensely. It's required supreme discipline for me to, I think I've had this bottle about a month, and I've really had to hold off on just guzzling it before we were able to get you over and judge it properly and give it a review, because it's just so appealing to just grab it off the shelf and have one. And it's so versatile as well. It's good at full strength, or, well, at 46.3. I would have loved to see it in cask strength if the brand people.
That would be a challenge, I think.
Yeah, it would be. It would probably want water, but this is. I think Deanston is one that that and everybody else and their dog are doing it these days. Deanston is one that I'd really love to see a cask strength edition come out in. I wouldn't even need the age statement though. If it was on there, I'd get quite excited. But anyway, it's very, very versatile. It's good with water. It's good without water. It's really good and with an ice cube if it's a really, really hot day. It's just works in every category and provides in every category. It's not really a foodie whiskey. It's not nearly dry enough for that. It's kind of a dessert.
Very nearly a dessert course, as you say, unto itself. And this won't work if you like your whiskey dry, peaty, herbaceous, spicy. Anything other than sweet and sticky and cloying, and you'll be disappointed. But since I like my whiskey sweet and fruity, this is really working for me.
It's excellent on its own. I really enjoy it, but it's one of the few enough whiskies which I would add to the list of first drams. You know, if you're trying to introduce beer yourself or someone else, you want to sort of upgrade them from simpler blends to a single malt that isn't too overwhelming, but will really convert someone. This along with Glenlivet and Glenfiddich, those sort of simpler, not too thinky 12-year-old malts. This is very much in that category of a whiskey that is just rippingly good, but doesn't require any particular experience to approach.
So a perfect gateway dram for the uninitiated, or a perfect purely enjoyable dram for
It's
those of us
a
who
whiskey
have
that
tried a few.
I think is impossible to hate. I don't know how anyone could try this whiskey and go, no, it's not for me, just because it's so likeable. You'd have to have a really, really niche taste.
I guess if you're a diehard, say, Isla fan, and you've got to have a good
if
walloping
you
of peat
only
to
drink
whiskey,
peated whiskies, I suppose, and they're those people do exist. They're weird, but they do exist.
If you don't like things too syrupy or sweet, then this will hold you back.
But I think this is a gorgeous whiskey, and it's a whiskey for everyone. And it's a whiskey for me as well, because I really appreciate a whiskey. I don't have to think particularly hard about this. I can just enjoy this one effortlessly. And it's on my list of ones in the ever-changing kaleidoscopic merry-go-round of malt whiskey these days, where something new and different is coming out every week, it seems. Distilleries opening left, right and centre, all kinds of rebrands, reformulations, re-releases, cask strength, whatever. Every time you walk into a whiskey shop, there'll be something new to tempt you there, which is why I so rarely, unless it comes down to cheap blends you've always got shoved in the bottom of the cabinet somewhere, I so rarely re-buy something. Because my wandering palate always seeks something new and interesting, and secondarily because if I buy something that I've had before, it's not much good for review. So we try to keep things fresh for that reason. This one is, I can tell you now, I am going to get some more of this whiskey because it's just so good, and I like it so much. And so it scores. And given how much I'm gushing, you'd expect it to be pretty high, and it is going to be pretty high. This one's a 92 for me. It's just such a consummate whiskey. It just brings it together from all these elements at once, and is just so effortlessly easy to enjoy. And as a slightly lazy person, I really appreciate that. What do you think about it?
90 for me. It is sweet, it is dripping of honey, it is juicy, just a little bit sharp in the right way. It is very well balanced and well-rounded. If you like your whiskey very sweet, very cloying, very moorish, but just a little bit of an edge too, just to make it a bit less, not just sipping on nectar. It's got a lot going on if you like that kind of thing. It fills a very particular niche. It is my very particular niche though, so I'm very much enjoying it. Yeah.
No, absolutely delicious, and I think maybe not so much underrated, it's just unknown. I barely looked at Deanston until I just sort of got this one on a whim because it was kind of on special. That's another thing, really good price on this one, not the premium you'll pay for some whiskies at all. Say a wee bit more than your base level Glenfiddich and whatnot, but not by a great deal. And I think there's a wee bit more whiskey going on. Well, 6.3% more whiskey mathematically, but I think even a bit more beyond that. So yeah, this one, super recommendation, should be available all over the world. And I think anyone should go and try that, especially if they are new to whiskey or they're getting it for someone who is newer to whiskey. I think this will get you on board quick smart.
This is a stunning offering, especially since the distillery itself is comparatively new to whiskey, being a mere fledgling at about 50 years old.
Surprising, really surprising. Yeah. Surprising in a way that the one that we tried last year, but recently enough, and I can never remember the jolly name of it. It was a mini, and it was Glen Boogie something.
Tullibardine, perhaps.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't Tullibardine. We haven't had Tullibardine for ages. No, we're rambling now. But anyway, just give it a try. It's really good. You almost can't lose with this one. So yeah, cheers, Deanston. Excellent. Slanger, we'll be right back.